Picture this. Someone hands you a sealed letter, and they tell you it's the only one of its kind in the whole world. There are no other copies, and there never can be. Then they tell you the 2 rules. Rule 1, you may never copy it. No photographs, no transcriptions, nothing. Rule 2, and this is the cruel one, the very instant you read so much as a single word of it, the entire letter crumbles to ash in your hands. And now the trap closes, because the letter is slowly rotting. A word here, a word there, quietly turning to nonsense while you stand there holding it. And your job, your only job, is to keep it perfect, forever. Catch every mistake, fix every one, in a message you are forbidden to copy and forbidden to read. That is not a party riddle. That is the exact wall that stood between us and a working quantum computer. And tonight, I want to know how on earth anybody climbed over it.
It's a beautiful trap, and I love that you can already feel the walls of it. Most people hear the phrase quantum error correction, their eyes glaze, and they never notice that underneath that dull grey name is one of the great escapes in all of science. You've just sketched the cell we were locked in. 2 rules, both iron. Can't copy it, can't look at it. And every honest method the human race has ever invented for fixing a mistake needs one or the other.
And we walked ourselves straight into that cell last time, didn't we? The episode before this one. We shut the door on ourselves. That was a bleak evening.
It was the low point of the whole journey, and I didn't soften it then, and I won't now, because it shouldn't be softened. We spent that entire conversation on how heartbreakingly delicate a qubit is, how the very thing that gives it its power, that it can sit in a blend of possibilities at once, a superposition, is also the thing that makes it a coward in the face of the world. Where we left the dream for dead.
Remind me of the shape of the despair, though, because I want us both standing in it before you rescue me. Why is a qubit so fragile?
Because it's always secretly being watched. Decoherence, the picture we built. A qubit holds its delicate superposition, and all it takes to wreck it is one stray scrap of the outside world. A wandering photon, a whisper of heat, a tremor in the wiring. Bumping into it and, in effect, asking it a question. Measuring it. And the moment the environment measures it, even by accident, the superposition collapses. The blend curdles into one plain answer, and the magic's gone.
So the outside world is constantly, clumsily reading the letter, which, by rule 2, burns it.
The outside world cannot stop reading it. And that left us with a genuine dead end, a paradox with no give in it. To compute, you need to reach in and control the qubit with exquisite precision. But to protect it, you need to seal it away from everything, perfectly, so nothing can touch it. And those 2 demands fight to the death. Perfect isolation and perfect control at once. It looked impossible, like the universe had handed us a machine and then made it illegal to keep the machine switched on.
And I remember we ended right there. The dream looks dead. So, go on. This is the rescue episode. You've promised me relief. Where does the first crack of light come in?
It comes in from a completely unglamorous place, from the ordinary, boring, unquantum world, from the way your phone and your bank and the space probes out past the planets already protect their information every single second, and have for decades. Because here's the thing worth saying first. Fixing errors in a fragile message is not a new problem. Classical engineers solved it long ago. So let's start where you'd start. If I handed you a message and said, "This might get corrupted on its way, protect it," what would you do? The trick that ought to work.
Oh, that one's easy. I'd make copies. If I'm worried a word might get garbled, I send it 3 times. Yes, yes, yes. Then, if it arrives as yes, no, yes, I know the middle one got hit and I take the majority. 2 out of the 3 say yes, so the answer's yes. Fixed.
Hugh just invented, in one breath, the oldest reliable trick in the book. It even has a name, a repetition code, and it's everywhere. Roughly how a scratched disk still plays, how a faint signal from a distant probe still arrives readable. You drown the message in redundancy and let the copies vote. The truth is whatever most agree on. A single error can't win a vote it's outnumbered in.
Right, so we're done. Make 3 qubits, all holding the same thing, and when one drifts, the other 2 outvote it. Where's the catch? There's obviously a catch, or this would have been a very short episode.
There are 2 catches, and they're precisely the 2 rules from your sealed letter. Watch how cleanly they knock down what you just said. To run your majority vote, you first had to make 3 copies. Copy, copy, copy. So, copy an unknown qubit for me.
I just make another one that matches it.
You can't. And this is one of the most iron facts in the whole subject. A law of nature flatly forbids it. You cannot build a machine that takes an unknown quantum state and spits out a perfect duplicate. It's called the no-cloning principle, and it's no engineering shortfall we'll fix next year. It's a theorem stitched into the rules of quantum mechanics as deeply as anything is.
Hold on, why not? A photocopier copies a page without knowing what's written on it. Why can't I build a qubit photocopier?
Because to copy the qubit faithfully, the machine would somehow have to know the full, delicate blend it's in, the exact tilt of it, the exact mix of possibilities. And the only way to find that out is to measure it. And measuring it
Collapses it. Rule 2, again. To learn what to copy, I destroy the very thing I was trying to copy. So the copy comes out, but the original's already dead.
You've got it. And here's a promise. No cloning is so beautiful and so load-bearing for what's coming. It's the thing that makes unbreakable codes possible, of all the surprises, that it deserves its own evening, and it'll get one soon. For tonight, hold it as a wall. You cannot copy a qubit. Full stop. So your first move, make 3 copies, is illegal from the start.
All right, that's the first pillar gone. But you said there were 2 catches.
The second's worse and deeper. Suppose I gave you the copies anyway. 3 qubits, all carrying the same state. To run the vote, what do? You look at them. You read out yes, no, yes, and count. But reading a qubit
Burns the letter, every single time. So even if I had my 3 copies, the act of checking them for errors is itself the thing that destroys them. I'd collapse all 3 just to find out whether they needed fixing. That's genuinely vicious. The inspection is the damage.
The inspection is the damage. And now you're standing exactly where the whole field stood, staring at those 2 walls. Can't copy, can't look. Every classical rescue needs one or the other, and both are forbidden by the laws of physics themselves. This is the bottom. This is where a reasonable person closes the notebook and says, well, it was a lovely idea, the quantum computer, but you plainly cannot protect the information, so it will never run long enough to do anything. And that's that.
And yet you're smiling, so somebody didn't close the notebook. The first turn, stop guarding the thing, spread it out.
Somebody stared at those 2 walls and asked a different question. Not, how do I copy it? Not, how do I look at it? But, why did I ever think the information had to live in one place at all? That question is the crack, the whole rescue in embryo. Your instinct, the repetition instinct, was to make several qubits each carry the full message. Little vaults, each with the same treasure. What if that's the wrong shape entirely?
What's the alternative? The message has to be somewhere.
Does it? Here's a different picture. Instead of 3 qubits, each holding the whole secret, take 1 qubit's worth of information. 1 logical qubit, we'll call it, the real message, and smear it across many physical qubits at once, so no single one holds any of it. The information isn't in the qubits, it's in the relationships between them, how they're correlated, the pattern they make together.
Smear it across them so no one of them holds it. Give me something to hang that on, because my hands are grabbing at air.
Then take a secret, a single word. The classical way to guard it: write it on 3 slips and lock each in a safe. 3 copies, and every copy is a place a thief could read the word. Now the quantum way. You split the word by a special scrambling into a handful of tokens and hand one to each of a group of people. And here's the property that matters. No single person's token means anything. Look at one alone, and it's pure gibberish, it tells you nothing. But the group together, in the precise way their tokens agree and disagree, holds the secret, and only the group.
So there's no one slip of paper to steal. The thief can grab any single person's token and walk away having learned exactly nothing.
Nothing at all. And do you see what that instantly buys us? It knocks a hole clean through wall number 2. The reason looking was fatal is that looking at the qubit read out the secret and collapsed it. But now, the secret isn't in any single qubit. So I can look at one qubit all I like. I can measure it, read it, collapse it flat, and I've learned nothing about the protected message because it was never in there. It was in the correlations, and I never touched those.
Oh, that's clever. The thing that made looking dangerous was that each qubit was a little window straight onto the secret, and you've just frosted all the windows. Each qubit individually shows you nothing, so peeking at one is harmless.
And here an old friend walks back in. To smear one qubit's worth of information across many so it lives only in their joint relationships, that is precisely entanglement, the resource we spent a whole evening on that ties quantum objects together so the whole holds more than the parts. Back then it felt spooky and useless. Here it's the load-bearing wall of the rescue. We don't copy the information, we entangle it outward.
So entanglement, which in the crisis episode was the victim, the fragile thing the environment kept smashing, is now the tool. That's a nice turn.
It's the whole turn. We fight the fragility of entanglement using entanglement. But hold on, we've only knocked down one wall. We can now look at individual qubits safely, yes. But looking at one qubit and finding nothing doesn't tell me whether an error has crept in. I've made peeking harmless, but I've also made it useless. If every single qubit looks like noise, whether or not there's a mistake, how do I ever catch the mistake?
Right. You frosted the windows so well you can't see the fire either. So what's the second move? The second turn. Never ask what it is, ask whether it still agrees.
The second move is the true jewel of the whole thing, and it's so simple once you see it that it feels like a cheat. We stop asking the forbidden question. The forbidden question is, what value are you? That's the one that reads the secret and burns the letter. Instead, we ask a completely different kind of question, one that has an answer even when we know nothing about the secret. We ask, do you two still agree?
Agree how? Agree about what?
Take 2 of the qubits that, by the way we set things up, are supposed to match. Supposed to be in step, whatever the secret is. I don't ask either what it holds. I ask them a single joint question. Are the 2 of you the same as each other, or have you drifted apart? And that question, do you agree, yes or no, has an honest answer that doesn't depend at all on what they are. 2 dancers can be in step or out of step, and you can see which from the balcony without knowing a single step of the choreography.
Give me the everyday version. 2 dancers is good, but push it harder.
2 sealed envelopes, a playing card in each, and the rule is the 2 cards are always supposed to be identical. I want to check nothing's gone wrong, that they still match, but I'm forbidden to open either. Sounds impossible. But imagine a little machine you feed both sealed envelopes into, and all it does is flash one of 2 lights. Green means these 2 match. Red means these 2 differ. It never tells you which card, never clubs or hearts or the number, only same or different.
So the machine answers, do they agree, without ever answering, what are they? And if it flashes red, mismatch, I know one of the two got corrupted because they were supposed to match.
You know a flip happened, and, with enough of these little comparisons across the whole group, you can even know which qubit is the odd one out. And you've learned that while reading 0 of the actual cards. The secret stayed sealed the whole time. Now, those flashes of light, the pattern of greens and reds, the here's where something went wrong, that pattern has a name. We call it the syndrome.
Syndrome like a medical syndrome? A doctor reads your symptoms.
Exactly. And it's the perfect word. A doctor reading your fever and pulse learns something's wrong, often what's wrong, without ever reading your private thoughts. The fever points to the illness without being it. The syndrome is the symptom of the error. It points to the mistake without exposing the message. We measure the syndrome. We never ever measure the data.
Now I have to ask the mechanical question, because I don't quite believe the little green and red machine exists. In real qubits, what is that machine? Where does the flash of light actually go? You can't just have an answer hanging in the air.
A fair challenge, and the answer's lovely and cheap. You bring in extra qubits, helper qubits, sometimes called ancillas, just an old word for a helper. A blank qubit whose only job is to sidle up to a couple of your data qubits and gently interact. An interaction built to soak up only the answer to, do these two agree, and nothing about their values, then carry that answer off to one side. And then you measure the helper. You read it flat, you burn that letter, but who cares? It never held the secret, only the yes or no. You destroy the messenger and keep the message.
Oh, that's the sleight of hand. You sacrifice a disposable qubit whose entire life was to hold one bit of gossip. Those two disagree, and you read it to death instead of the precious one. The helper takes the bullet.
The helper takes the bullet, and you send in a fresh one the next instant, forever. So look what we've assembled. We spread the information across many qubits, so no single one holds it. That made looking harmless. And we ask only comparison questions through disposable helpers. That made looking useful again without ever reading the data. Both walls down. We can watch for errors continuously on a message we're still forbidden to read. The impossible thing from your opening, fixing a letter you can't read. We're doing it.
We're actually doing it. Hang on, let me just sit in that a second, because 10 minutes ago, that was a flat contradiction, and now it's a procedure. That's a good feeling. All right, but I can feel you holding something back. This has been almost too smooth. The quantum twist and a small miracle.
You have good ears. Everything so far would rescue a classical fragile message beautifully. The genuinely quantum trouble is that a qubit has more ways to break than a bit does, and one is downright sneaky. A bit fails one way, it flips a 0 to a 1 or back. That's the whole menu, and our comparison trick catches it. A flip breaks the agreement, the light flashes red, done.
And a qubit can fail? Some other way?
A qubit can flip in a second, hidden dimension. A qubit isn't just a 0 or 1, it holds a blend, a superposition, and that blend carries something beyond how much 0, how much 1. A kind of internal sign, a phase, the very thing that, back when we talked interference, decided whether two possibilities add or cancel. And that sign can flip on its own, silently, while the 0 and 1 part looks untouched. A phase flip, an error with no classical cousin, and it's poison because it corrupts exactly the delicate interference that made the quantum computer worth building.
So there's the obvious break, the bit flip, and this second invisible break, the phase flip, that a naive check would sail right past. Can the same trick catch both?
It can, and it's rather elegant. You run two families of comparison checks at once. One asks, Do you two still agree in the ordinary 0 or 1 sense that Hunt's bit flips? The other asks the same style of question rotated into the sign, the phase. Do you agree about that? And Hunt's phase flips. Two sets of green and red lights, watching two ways the message can rot. Catch both and, trust me a moment here, you've caught everything.
No, don't let me trust you on it because that can't be right and you know it can't. A qubit is this smooth, continuous thing, a direction it can point in space, any direction at all. It can be nudged the tiniest sliver off true, a hair's breadth rotation, any amount at all. There aren't two ways for it to break. There are infinitely many, every possible little push. How can two families of yes or no checks possibly catch an infinite smooth continuum of tiny errors?
That is exactly the right objection, and it's the one that should have sunk the whole enterprise. And the answer is, honestly, one of the most beautiful facts I know in any science. Here it is. The very act of measuring the syndrome, asking, "Do you agree?" and getting a crisp yes or no back, forces the error to stop being smooth.
Forces it? What do you mean, forces it?
Think what a measurement always does. It takes a blurry blend of possibilities and in the asking snaps it to one crisp answer. That's collapse. The same collapse that's haunted us all along. Now point that gun at the error. Say a qubit's been nudged a tiny sliver toward a flip. Mostly fine, a whisper of flip mixed in. When the helper asks, "Did a flip happen here?" it doesn't get a wishy-washy, sort of. The measurement won't allow it. It snaps to a definite answer. Most of the time it flashes green, no flip. And in flashing green, it collapses the qubit back to no flip at all. The tiny error is simply gone, erased by the act of checking. And once in a while, it flashes red. Yes, a full flip. And you just flip it back.
Wait, so the measurement doesn't just detect the error, it rounds it off. It takes my scary infinite continuum of tiny partial nudges and forces each one to confess as either nothing happened or a clean, whole, standard flip happened. There's no in-between allowed because measurement never allows an in-between.
You've said it better than I did. We call it the digitization of errors, the continuous made discrete by the act of looking at it sideways. And it changes everything, because we no longer have to design a repair for infinitely many possible smudges. There are only ever a handful of clean, discrete errors to fix. A flip, a phase flip, or both. And the measurement itself sorts every messy real-world nudge into one of those tidy bins. The quantum smoothness that tormented us for 7 whole episodes is exactly what makes the repair finite.
That's the first thing all evening that's felt like the universe doing us a favor instead of setting a trap. So the enemy's own weapon, collapse, the thing that's been burning our letters this whole time, collapse is now on our side. It's collapsing the errors down into a shape we can fix.
Turned clean around. That's the emotional heart of the rescue, if you want one line to carry out the door. We stopped fighting collapse and put it to work. The surface code laid out like a floor.
So paint me the real thing, not the toy with 2 envelopes, the actual machine people are building. What does this protected qubit physically look like?
The version most serious builders have bet on, you can picture as a floor. A tiled checkerboard laid out flat, and you sprinkle your physical qubits across it in a regular pattern. Some are the data qubits, carrying between them, in their shared correlations, that one precious logical qubit. And nestled among them, repeating, are the helper qubits. The little green and red checkers, each sitting quietly among its handful of neighbors.
And each helper only talks to the neighbors right next to it. It's all local?
All local. That's a huge part of the beauty. Nothing has to reach across the whole chip. And they never stop. Round after round, every helper turns to the clump of data qubits around it and asks its one dull question. You lot still agree? One family asking about flips, the other about phases, all across the floor, forever. As long as the machine's on, that floor hums with these little local checks, constantly taking the pulse of the patch.
And when an error strikes, when some qubit gets bumped, what actually happens on the floor? What do I see?
You see a couple of checkers light up red. An error on a single qubit upsets the two checkers on either side of it, a little pair of alarms. And here's the pretty part. Suppose it's not one error, but a whole chain, a run of qubits knocked over in a line. You'd think that lights up alarms all down the line. It doesn't. In the middle, the errors cancel as far as the checkers can tell. Neighbor still agrees with neighbor. Only the two ends light up. The whole streak of damage announces itself with two red lights, one at each tip.
So the alarm pattern doesn't hand me the error on a plate. I see two red lights, and I have to figure out what happened between them, and there could be more than one story. A short chain here, a longer one taking the scenic route, both lighting up the same two ends.
And there's the last job. A piece of the machine, a decoder, running on an ordinary computer off to the side, whose whole task is to stare at that pattern of red lights and work out the most likely errors behind it. Which chains most probably connect those endpoints. It's a bit like a detective handed only the two spots where footprints enter and leave a field, reasoning out the likeliest path across it. Get the path right, undo it, and the floor's clean again, and the logical qubit, smeared across all of it, never noticed a thing.
But here's what I still don't understand. If errors are lighting up all over this floor constantly, why doesn't the actual message eventually get overwhelmed? What makes the logical qubit so much tougher than the physical ones it's built from?
Because, and this is the deepest idea in the whole design, the logical information isn't stored in any spot on the floor. It's stored in a global property of the whole sheet. Think of a great loop woven right across the fabric, edge to edge. And to corrupt that, a run of errors would have to line up and stretch all the way across the floor, in a single unbroken conspiracy, faster than the checkers and decoder can mop them up.
A little local error can't do that. A little local error just lights up its two neighbors and gets caught and swept away.
A little local error is nothing to it. Only a coordinated stripe of failure spanning the whole tile can hurt the logical qubit, enormously unlikely from random noise if the individual qubits aren't too terrible. And here's the payoff that turns it from a trick into a strategy. Want it safer? Just make the floor bigger. A wider floor means the conspiracy has to stretch further, which makes it far rarer. Enlarge the tile a little, and the odds of a fatal error don't just shrink, they fall away exponentially. You buy as much safety as you'll pay for in floor space.
So the protected qubit is tougher than its parts because you'd have to corrupt a whole line of them in concert to touch it, and any stray few get caught. The strength lives in the pattern, not the pieces. Honestly, that's a bit like how a rumor or a tradition survives, even though every single person carrying it is unreliable and forgetful. No one head holds it safely, but the crowd, cross-checking each other, keeps it alive.
That's a lovely way to hold it, and keep that thought right at the front, because it walks us straight into the one worry that could still sink everything. The worry that nearly ruins it, and the theorem that saves it.
Go on then, because I do have a worry, and it's been building. All these helper qubits, all these checks, round after round, the decoder, the interactions, the constant measuring. Every one of those things is also built out of the same fragile, noisy quantum parts we've been complaining about all along. The checkers can misfire. The helpers can themselves get corrupted. The gentle interactions can slip. So aren't you just adding more things that break? Every new qubit you sprinkle on that floor is another qubit that can fail. It feels like bailing a leaky boat with a leaky bucket. How do you know the cure isn't sicker than the disease?
That, right there, is the single most important question in this whole field, and I'm glad it's yours. You've spotted the snake eating its own tail. The error correction is made of the very stuff that has errors. So does piling on machinery clean things up, or just add more places to fail, until you're worse off than a single bare qubit? For a while nobody knew. It was genuinely possible the whole scheme was a mirage. Every helper qubit costing more than it saved, forever, and the dream really dead.
So what's the answer? Because the way you're building this up, there's an answer.
There's an answer, and it has the shape of a theorem, a proved mathematical fact, which is why it landed like sunrise. It's called the threshold theorem, and here's what it says in plain words. There's a certain critical level of quality for your parts, a threshold, a particular error rate, and everything hinges on which side of it you're on. If your qubits and gates are worse than that threshold, your fear comes true. More machinery makes things worse, every helper costs more than it saves, and you lose. But if your parts are even a little better than the threshold, everything flips. Making the code bigger now cleans the message faster than the machinery dirties it. The correction wins the race, and you can drive the chance of a logical error as low as you like, as near to perfect as you care to pay for.
Say that again, because I think it just went past me and it sounds enormous. You're telling me there's a line, and on the wrong side of the line, more effort makes it worse. But on the right side of the line, I can make the protected qubit as flawless as I please, out of parts that are themselves permanently, hopelessly imperfect.
As flawless as you please. Out of parts that are none of them any good. That is precisely exactly what the theorem says. You do not need perfect components. You never did. You only need components that clear one specific bar, and once they clear it, arbitrarily reliable computation is possible in principle. And it's now only a question of how much you're willing to build.
That's the sunrise. I feel it. Because up to this second, everything's been, here's a clever trick that seems to work. And a clever trick can always have a hidden hole. But a theorem doesn't have a hidden hole. Somebody proved the dead man can be revived.
Somebody proved it. And here's the picture that makes it sit right, because it's very human. A sacred text in the centuries before printing, kept alive only by monks copying it by hand, generation on generation. Every scribe is imperfect, the odd slip, a dropped word, a misread letter. Left alone, errors pile up copy on copy, and after enough generations, the text rots into gibberish and is lost. So you add proofreaders, scribes checking scribes. Now everything hangs on one number. If the proofreaders catch mistakes faster than the scribes make them, the text survives perfectly, letter for letter, across unlimited generations, out of nothing but fallible human hands. But if the scribes are too sloppy, errors faster than they're caught, no amount of proofreading saves you. More scribes just means more rot. There's a tipping point.
And below the tipping point, good enough scribes, the text is immortal, even though not one human hand in the whole chain was reliable.
Immortal from mortal parts. That is the threshold theorem, and that is the quantum computer's stay of execution. The dream we left for dead at the end of last time. Noise was going to kill it, we said, and it looked airtight. The dream is not dead. It was never dead. It just needed us to stop protecting information the way you'd guard a jewel in a single locked box, and start protecting it the way a community protects a story. Spread wide, cross-checked, and endlessly, patiently repaired. The sobering bill.
All right, I've had my sunrise, and I'm not going to let you take it back. But I've been on this show long enough to know that when you get this warm and this happy, there's usually an invoice coming. You've been honest with me every episode about the cost of things. So, what does this actually cost? What's the catch under the miracle?
The catch is the bill, and it's a big one. I won't dress it up. Everything I've described is real and works, but it's breathtakingly expensive in qubits. Back to the floor. The more flawless you want that one protected qubit, the bigger the floor has to be. More and more physical qubits, all spent protecting the single logical qubit smeared across them.
Give me the scale of it. When you say more, are we talking a handful of physical qubits per protected one? A dozen?
For the quality a serious computation demands, somewhere in the range of hundreds to thousands of physical qubits to make one good, reliable logical qubit. Not a handful. Hundreds, and for the hardest work, thousands. Every one a real, cooled, controlled, fragile piece of hardware, all conscripted to keep a single trustworthy qubit alive.
Hundreds to thousands of the real things, for one usable one. And an algorithm that actually matters. The kind of thing we talked about that could crack a code or simulate a molecule, that needs a lot of usable qubits, doesn't it? Not one, thousands.
Which is exactly where the arithmetic becomes sobering. Take thousands of logical qubits, each costing hundreds to thousands of physical ones, and you land at a machine with something on the order of 1,000,000 physical qubits, or more. And the largest machines anyone has actually built today count their qubits in the hundreds, in the very best cases, 1,000 or so. So we're talking about a mountain, a gap of 1,000-fold and beyond between what we can build now and what the full dream requires.
So the relief comes with a very long road attached.
A very long road. But, and here's the word to land on, it's a mountain, not a wall, and that difference is the whole point of tonight. Last time we had a wall, a flat impossibility, physics itself forbidding the thing, no way through, ever. Tonight that wall turned out to have a door, and we walked through, and on the far side there's a mountain. An enormous, punishing, expensive mountain of engineering. But mountains get climbed. People are climbing this one right now, a bit more every year. Impossible became hard. And in this business, that's the most hopeful sentence there is. What we did tonight.
Let me try to carry the whole thing myself, and you catch me if I drop it. We started in despair. A qubit's fragile, the world keeps accidentally reading it, and the two ways anyone's ever fixed a broken message, copy it or look at it, are both forbidden by physics. Flat dead end. Then the escape in 2 moves. 1. Don't store the message in any single qubit. Smear it across many with entanglement, so no one qubit holds the secret, which makes looking at any one harmless. 2. Never ask a qubit, "What are you?" Only ask pairs, "Do you two still agree?" through disposable helpers, so you catch errors without ever reading the data. And then the little miracle. Checking digitizes the errors, rounds every messy nudge down to a clean flip you can just undo.
Flawless. Keep going, you're almost home.
Then you laid it on a floor, a tile of qubits, local checkers humming round after round, an error lighting a pair of alarms at the ends of its trail, a decoder reasoning out what went wrong and sweeping it up, with the real message living not in any tile but in a pattern stretched across the whole floor. So only an impossible conspiracy of errors lined up edge to edge could touch it. And when I worried the cure was as sick as the disease, you gave me the threshold theorem. A proof that if your parts clear one critical bar, you can make the protected qubit as perfect as you please, out of parts that are all imperfect. Immortal text from mortal scribes. And the price is a mountain of hardware, hundreds to thousands of physical qubits per good one, but a mountain, not a wall.
There's your whole evening, in your own mouth, and you didn't drop a piece of it. I'll only add the line that ties it back to the very first night of all this. We began with a strange idea, that information is physical. Not an abstract thing floating free of the world, but a real resource, woven into matter and energy, obeying the laws of physics. Well, tonight that idea comes home to roost, for good and ill. Because information is physical, it can rot. It sits in fragile stuff and decays like everything physical does. But because it's physical, it can also be engineered, spread out, cross-checked, repaired, with real machines built for the purpose. The same fact that doomed us is the fact that saves us. Information lives in the world. So the world can break it, and the world can be built to protect it.
And that leaves us where? Because I can feel a pin going into your coat again. You keep teasing this "you can't copy a qubit" law like it's got a whole story behind it.
It has, and it's the loveliest turn of the lot, and it's next time. Because that same law, no cloning, the one that forbade us from copying our way out of trouble tonight, the one that felt like pure obstruction, that exact same law, turned around, is what lets you send a quantum state clear across the world without it ever crossing the space between, and lets you build a secret code that no computer, no eavesdropper, not now and not ever, can break. The wall that trapped us tonight becomes a gift next time. The thing that stops you copying a qubit is the very thing that makes a message unbreakable.
So the same rule that nearly killed the dream is the one that hands us unbreakable secrets. Of course it is. All right, put the pin in. I came in tonight thinking you couldn't possibly fix a letter you're forbidden to read, and I'm leaving knowing exactly how it's done, and knowing there's a theorem that says the machine can be saved. That's the most hopeful I've felt in this whole series. Don't let me down next time. Good night.
Never on the cheap. Good night.